Here are 7 Simpsons characters that perfectly embody the 7 deadly sins. Gluttony. Homer Simpson. Homer Simpson could easily embody more than one sin depending on the episode, or, let's be honest, depending on how lazy the writers were that week. Sloth? Sure, the guy naps through half his problems. Wrath? Have you seen him with Bart?
Dad? Did you hear that, Homer?
Marge, please, I'm busy!
Pride. Well, he once declared himself king of the world after conquering a mountain of pancakes. But gluttony? That's his bread and butter. Yes, that was a pun, and yes, it was awful. Can we please continue? Thank you, you're appreciated. Now, let's talk about one of his most iconic overeating moments, the Moo Moo episode. After discovering he could work from home by gaining weight, Homer embarked on the most ambitious bulk of his life. He ditched his usual blue jeans for a flowing Moo Moo and a ceremonial bucket of fried chicken. When your workout plan involves waddling to the fridge, you know you've taken gluttony to an art form. And I know this isn't a canonical episode, but I think it's the perfect representation of Homer's gluttony. Remember Treehouse of Horror 4? Homer sells his soul to Devil Flanders for a single donut. When the devil collects his soul and casts him in hell, as an ironic punishment, a demon forcefully feeds Homer every donut in the world. The ironic twist to this ironic punishment is that Homer does in fact eat all the donuts in the world, and asks for more. Homer's gluttony even scares demons. So how much someone like Homer eats in a day? Funny you should ask, because someone on the internet, because this is what the internet does, calculated Homer's average caloric intake. Turns out he downs nearly 25,000 calories a day. That's over 9 times the recommended daily amount for a human being. His snacks alone, Chippos, hot dogs, and 64 slices of American cheese add up to 11,000 calories. Throw in 12 Duff beers and a full roast pig, and you've got a walking, talking caloric apocalypse. Even on his off days, Homer's gluttony is a force of nature. From sneaking bites at all-you-can-eat buffet to inhaling crusty burgers like they're oxygen, he's not just eating, he's performing. And yet, beneath all the binge-eating chaos lies a character who somehow makes his excesses endearing.
God, he eats like a pig.
I don't know. Pigs tend to chew. I'd say he eats more like a duck.
Sloth, Barney Gumble. If Sloth could belch, it would sound a lot like Barney Gumble. The guy spends more time passed out at Moe's Tavern than most people spend at work. But Barney isn't just a lazy, beer-guzzling punchline. He's also one of the most tragic figures in Springfield, even if his life is served up with a side of comedy. Barney's journey into Sloth started long before Moe's Tavern became his second home. As a teenager, he was actually a promising student with dreams of success until Homer introduced him to beer. That one drink was all it took to derail his life, sending him on a path to Moe's Barstool. And the rest, as they say, is history. Or in Barney's case, a sad montage of burps, blackouts, and missed opportunities. Despite being the embodiment of sloth, Barney's story is more complex than it seems. Sure, he's lazy, unmotivated, and always chasing his next drink, but there have been flashes of brilliance that show the life he could have had. Take his film Pocahontas, for instance, a dark art house masterpiece that won the Springfield Film Festival.
Next, they're gonna show my movie!
You made a movie?
I made a movie?
The short was a brutally honest look at his life as an alcoholic, blending humor and heartbreak in equal measure. Unfortunately, his prize, a lifetime supply of Duff beer, which all but guaranteed he'd never escape the cycle of addiction.
Congratulations, Barney, and enjoy your grand prize, a lifetime supply of Duff beer.
And it's not like Barney hasn't tried to turn things around. In Days of Wine and Dose, Barney sobers up and shows surprising potential as a productive member of society. He even takes flying lessons, hinting at the kind of life he could have if he could just stay away from the booze. But the writers and Moe, always pulling back into the bar, reinforced the tragic reality of his character. Even when he briefly trained as an astronaut in Deep Space Homer, his sobriety was undone by non-alcoholic champagne. Yes, non-alcoholic.
It begins!
Barney's situation is tough. He's basically stuck in a never-ending loop, trapped in a cycle of missed opportunities and regret, where even his own potential feels out of reach. But Springfield doesn't stop for anyone, and neither do the sins of its residents. Speaking of which, let's move from sloth to greed, and who better to embody it than Springfield's richest and most ruthless citizen? Greed, Mr. Burns. Okay, another obvious choice. Mr. Burns has become the archetype for a greedy, evil, rich guy in animated TV. Scrooge McDuck, Mr. Krabs, Mom from Futurama, Carter Pewterschmidt, they all owe some of their DNA to Springfield's wealthiest and greediest resident.
So, you want some of my electricity, do you?
Well, for once, the rich white man is in control.
While there's a rumor floating around that he was based on a member of the Rothschild family, his actual inspiration is rooted in a mix of real and fictional greedy figures. Matt Groening has cited oil tycoon John D. Rockefeller, It's a Wonderful Life's Henry Potter, and even Charles Foster Kane from Citizen Kane as influences. And if you watch the show enough, to say that the last one was a pretty big influence would be an understatement. In the show's prime first 10 or so seasons, Burns wasn't just evil, he was funny evil, more so than most of his successors. Scrooge McDuck hoarded his money, but at least he swam in it. Burns hoards his wealth to the point of forgetting he has it, all while exploiting the people of Springfield with cartoonishly cruel schemes.
One last question. Have you ever seen the sun set at 3 p.m.?
One of the clearest examples of his greed comes in the Simpsons classic, Who Shot Mr. Burns? Burns blocks out the sun just so Springfield has to use its power plant 24/7. Even Smithers, his endlessly loyal lackey, called it out as a step too far. Burns didn't care. He had already abandoned morality in the name of profit decades earlier. But let's not forget his petty moments. This is a man who literally tried to take candy from a baby and succeeded. Or when he hit Bart with his car, offered $100 as restitution, and went on to win the lawsuit. His greed is so ingrained in his character that when he loses everything, like in The Old Man and the Lisa, he immediately starts recycling sea life into edible paste to make profit.
You haven't changed at all. You're still evil, and when you're trying to be good, you're even more evil.
Still, every once in a while, a small sliver of humanity peeks through. Whether it's his relationship with his childhood teddy bear Bobo, or his rare moments of genuine affection for Smithers, Burns occasionally reminds us that even the greediest characters have a soul buried somewhere. Just not too often. And speaking of someone who rarely holds back, let's talk about Springfield's mayor and his never-ending scandals. Lust. Mayor Quimby. Here's a character based on a real person, and we don't want to talk badly about someone who's passed, but let's not act like we haven't heard the stories about JFK. Come on, even your high school history teacher probably dropped a hint or two. No? It was just my teacher? Alrighty then. Now, Simpsons writers didn't just hint, they went all in. Mayor Quimby, with his Boston accent, beachside mansion, and love for affairs, is basically a parody of the Kennedy legacy. Actually, scratch that, it's a full-on parody. Quimby's cheating is out of control. He's been unfaithful to his wife, Martha, with everyone from Miss Springfield to Cookie Kwan, and then there's the time he accidentally hooked up with, well, just look at the clip.
Remember, if anyone asked, you're my niece from out of town.
I am your niece, Uncle Joe.
Good Lord, I'm an abomination.
Yeah, not exactly a moment for the family photo album. Whether he's at the Quimby compound or sneaking around backstage with Miss Springfield, Joe treats Springfield like his personal dating app. His most outrageous moments, they usually happen in public. Remember when he used money meant for fixing streets to build a pool? And not just any pool, but one he used for, let's just say, private parties. And when people asked him about it, he didn't even try to deny it.
Mayor Quimby!
Well, there could be any mayor.
Quimby's lust isn't just limited to backroom affairs and quick exits from seedy motels. He embodies the trope of the sleazy politician who always has had a hand in the cookie jar. Literally, sometimes. Springfield's residents have grown so accustomed to his antics that it's almost a running joke. Honestly, his commitment to being a lustful creep for so long is almost enviable. It's a milestone in staying true to his character. And speaking of envy, Frank Grimes. Okay, this might feel like a controversial choice. Frank Grimes isn't a main character, a side character, or even a recurring one. In fact, by the end of the first, we see Frank dead and buried. From there, we only see him as a ghost in one of the Treehouse of Horrors episodes. Still, I don't think many of you won't have a problem with this choice. Does it get more fitting than this? You don't have to be a diehard Simpsons fan to know about Grimy, the ultimate symbol of how envy can eat you alive. Frank Grimes, introduced in the iconic episode Homer's Enemy, was crafted as a foil to Homer. Frank is everything Homer isn't. Hardworking, overqualified, and perpetually unlucky. But instead of admiration, all Frank feels is bitterness, watching Homer coast through life without a shred of effort while he himself struggles. From the moment Frank steps into the nuclear power plant, he can't stand Homer. He just doesn't get how this clueless, lazy guy not only has a job, but is actually doing well, at least by Springfield standards. Frank gets more and more frustrated as he watches Homer do things like pour water on control panels to fix them. When Frank stops Homer from drinking a beaker of acid, you'd think he'd get some credit, but nope. Homer reports him to Mr. Burns for accidentally burning a wall with that same acid. That's the last straw for Frank, and he finally loses it.
Hi, grimy old buddy.
I'm not your buddy, Simpson. I don't like you. In fact, I hate you. Stay the hell away from me. Because from now on, we're enemies.
The boiling point comes when Homer invites Frank over for dinner to make up for things. Instead of mending fences, the visit becomes a live nightmare for Grimes. Homer, oblivious as ever, proudly shows off his dream home, 2 cars and a trophy case and even a Grammy. Frank's response? A legendary meltdown where he declares Homer the embodiment of everything wrong with America. But envy doesn't just simmer, it consumes. By the episode's end, Frank tries to mock Homer's stupidity by imitating him before accidentally electrocuting himself.
What's this? Extremely high voltage. Well, I don't need safety gloves because I'm Homer Simpson.
His funeral is the final punchline, with Homer dozing off and muttering, "Change the channel, Marge." Cue everyone laughing, loving silly old Homer. Maybe Frank's sin was kinda justified. But if envy can be explained, wrath is even easier to understand. Just look at Mo. Wrath. Mo Sislak. Before we continue, let me break the fourth wall for a second here. I seriously thought about putting Bart here for wrath. After all, the kids cause more property damage than a natural disaster. But let's be real, Bart's more of a mischief maker, a chaos gremlin. He's not wrathful, he's just, well, Bart. Then there's Grandpa Simpson, you know, the guy who gave us the legendary old man yells at cloud meme, but yelling at clouds is more senility than pure unfiltered rage. So I had to dig deeper and the answer became painfully obvious. Mo Sislak. Because if there's one man in Springfield who can channel pure wrath, it's the guy who's one bad day away from turning his bar into Thunderdome. Now, Mo wasn't always this way. Back in the early days of The Simpsons, he was just the gravel-voiced bartender you could count on for a drink and a shady deal. But as the show evolved, so did Mo into the angry, bitter, and downright terrifying figure we know today. He's not just mad at life, he's mad at everything. Customers, prank callers, his own reflection, it doesn't matter. Mo's default settings is rage, often hilariously over the top. Case in point, every single prank call Bart ever made. Bart calls asking for someone like IP Freely, and Mo immediately threatens to rip your guts out without even checking if the name is real. That's not just wrath, that's nuclear level wrath. But Mo's anger isn't just for comedy. Dig a little deeper and you'll see it comes from a place of profound sadness. This is a guy who's been beaten down by life at every turn. His bar barely makes a profit, his love life is a dumpster fire, and his self-esteem, let's just say it's in worse shape than his face. He's got reasons to be mad for him, that's all I'm saying, so it's easier to understand why he's Springfield's unofficial mob leader whenever there's an angry crowd with pitchfork. Whether it's burning down the quick E-Mart or protesting another tax hike, Mo's always leading the charge, fists clenched, ready to fight. It's like the writer saw his simmering rage and said, yeah, let's just crank that up to 11. Mo Sislak is wrath personified, a ticking time bomb fueled by disappointment, loneliness, a whole lot of alcohol. Hey, if you ever need someone to start a riot, Mo's your guy. Just don't prank call him. Seriously, don't. Now, for our final sin, pride. Lisa Simpson. Lisa Simpson may have her cute and wholesome moments, but there's no denying she's the walking embodiment of pride. She's got intelligence, talent, and convictions, which could make her a role model, but instead her holier-than-thou attitude often turns her into Springfield's most grating character. Her family can't stand her lectures, her peers find her insufferable, and even Simpsons fans sometimes roll their eyes at her self-righteousness.
Mom? Prohibition may be unpopular, but it's the law, and we still have
Go to your room, Lisa!
Take her infamous vegetarian arc, as she wrecked Homer's barbecue because she couldn't tolerate others eating meat. Sure, standing up for her beliefs is admirable, but destroying the event because of differing opinions, that's peak Lisa. The same goes for her behavior in the Angel episode. While the whole town believed in the miracle, Lisa dismissed everyone as ignorant, including her mom. Ironically, she's outraged when her own beliefs are challenged, like when Ned replaced evolution in schools with creationism.
But it can't be an angel!
Oh, no? Well, if you're so sure what it ain't, how about telling us what it am?
Her pride doesn't just stay in the realm of values, it often seeps into her interactions with others, especially her family. Remember when Bart picked up drumming? Instead of cheering him on, Lisa threw a fit, claiming she deserved the spotlight.
Lisa, why aren't you smiling with us?
'Cause I've wanted to jam with jazz musicians all my life. How would Bart like it if I just hopped on a skateboard and instantly became great?
Or the time Maggie's IQ test revealed she was smarter than Lisa, Lisa couldn't handle it. Although Marge giving her this sure didn't help at all much. Lisa might preach fairness and compassion, but her actions often scream hypocrisy. Fans are quick to spot contradictions like these, and over time they turn lovable characters into ones they love to hate. Case in point, Brian Griffin. In Family Guy's early seasons, Brian was the voice of reason, calm, intellectual, and grounded. But as the show went on, his pride and hypocrisy became impossible to ignore. If you want to dive deeper into this, check out my video where I break down the 7 deadly sins as Family Guy characters.